Hello. Oh. Hello. First, I'd like to remind everyone here to turn off your cell phones. Before we begin this evening's performance, we would like to acknowledge that this theater stands on territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Petun First Nations. We are also mindful of broken covenants and the need to make right with all our relations. And now, please enjoy the show.
Oh, sorry, hello?
Yes.
Sorry, excuse me, should we go?
Excuse me?
Oh, no, I just mean if we're on someone else's land, shouldn't we leave?
Oh, no. The theater is here now. We'd just like to acknowledge whose land it is.
I'm sorry, I'm so confused. So if we're on someone else's land, shouldn't we do something about that, or?
Hopefully we'll enjoy the performance.
Oh, okay, so some of the money from the ticket sales of the show are going to the indigenous communities?
Well, no.
Oh, a portion of them?
No, the ticket sales go to the theater.
So is the money from the bottled water sold here going to the First Nations for clean drinking water, or?
Oh, no, that money goes to Nestle.
Nestle.
They're a sponsor.
I'm so sorry, I'm so confused. So whose land are we on? What are we doing?
It's a dialogue.
How are we making right?
Well, there's a plaque you can read in the lobby.
I don't understand.
I'm getting a message from the stage manager that we need to begin the show, so please take your seats.
But,
have a good time.
But,
Good night.
Guess I'll sit down. Enjoy the show. Just enjoy the show.
Guelph, known as Tadina Dooney, the place where they built the Mohawk Nation on the shores of Amnimoha River. As it's known to the Mississaugas, this place has many names that are not consecrated on colonial maps. We're on the traditional lands of Atawandren, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples, and on the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit. This place is home to people who can trace their lineage back thousands of years. We're in the jurisdiction of the two-row wampum and the dish with one spoon covenant. These are nation-to-nation agreements, and they serve as reminders that all the people on this land are still accountable for the promises made to their ancestors. This land is a product of many stories, seen and unseen. It is shaped by the wind, the water, and the people that have flowed and continue to flow across it. It is one of the many meeting grounds of Turtle Island. It has been the stage for many dramas that have been forgotten and many that are all too well remembered. But all of these dramas have played a part in building the life that we have today, with all of its privilege and all of its pain. Being honest and open about the history is central to the land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are not meant to instill guilt or to assert treaty rights. They're not meant to pay lip service to institutional or governmental mandates, nor are they meant to simply convey sympathies or regret. They're a way for us to feel more connected to the land that sustains us. They are a reminder of our responsibilities to the land and our relationship to the natural world. They're meant to push us to educate ourselves about the history that has shaped our lives here so we can begin rebuilding relationships from a place of honesty. Land acknowledgements are meant to remind us that Canada was founded neither on pristine wilderness nor empty space. Rather, it was built alongside and then on top of Indigenous nations that existed since time immemorial. And also to remind us that those nations continue to exist and continue to have responsibilities to the land and inherent rights to determine their own futures and practice their own language and cultures without discrimination or interference from other forms of the government. The land acknowledgement highlights the importance that Indigenous peoples place on kinship and land in a culturally responsible way. And it's a step towards rebuilding a future focused on understanding, respect, reciprocity, and reconnection with the land and with one another. Finally, the land acknowledgement is a platform for real change and real commitments to be put forward. It is meant to break the silence that has left Indigenous people and communities in Canada deprived of clean water, disadvantaged in educational opportunities, forced into housing and poverty crises, and destabilized by systemic and racism and inequities. For settlers and visitors, the land acknowledgement should inspire questions like, what steps will Western institutions and organizations take to mend the privilege gap, which began with colonization and has continued in so many of our present-day policies? How have you benefited from colonization at the expense of the cultures, lives, and livelihood of Indigenous people? And what will your contributions be to reconciliation and a future focused on equity, reciprocity, and nation-to-nation relationships? As a church, as a community, we continue to ask ourselves these hard questions and to sit in our discomfort and to enter in with vulnerability. We strive to educate ourselves and each other while being kind to ourselves and extending grace to others. If you want to enter in deeper into these questions, we do have an Indigenous Studies group here at First Baptist that they meet every Wednesday at 7 p.m. where they explore these themes together. We will continue to provide opportunities for education. And one of these opportunities will be coming up on October 15th at 10 a.m. during our gathering here together. We'll be meeting in the gym. If you can please try to arrive a little bit early, we will be beginning promptly at 10 a.m. We will experience an Indigenous practice called the blanket ceremony, led by Bruce Weaver, whose ancestry is native to the Mohawk Nation. The goal is to build an understanding of our shared history as Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada. So please bring your own towel to this, and this will represent your blanket for the time together, and we're really looking forward to this opportunity. Good morning. Welcome to First Baptist Church. Good morning to those who are joining us online. We're so glad that you're able to join us in this way. If you are new here this morning, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. If you'd like to know a little bit more about us, I encourage you to visit our website, fbcg.ca, or you can grab a connection card just in the pews ahead of you. You can grab one and fill it out and put it in the back box at the back of the sanctuary, and we will be so glad to connect with you. If you brought kids here with you this morning, we do have junior church. I will dismiss them midway through our worship time together. Our junior church is today. It will be from preschool to grade 6. We do not have intermediate church today. So if you have kids between those ages today, you can, I will dismiss them later on during the service. We do have one announcement this morning. Our Thanksgiving food drive is starting up this week. We have a table downstairs where you can donate your non-perishable food. And as Brent announced last week, all of these donations will go towards the University of Guelph food drive, as there's children and people on the wait list to feed their families there. And that is all for the announcements this morning. I'm going to invite you to stand as you are able, and let's worship together this morning.
God is able, He will never fail. He is Almighty God. He's greater than all we see. He's greater than all we ask. He has done great things. Lifted up, He defeated the grave and raised to life. Our God is able. In His name we overcome. For the Lord our God is able. God is with us. God is on our side, and He will make a way. He's far above all we know. He's far above all defeated the grave, raised to life. Our God is able. In his name we overcome. For the Lord our God is able. God is with us. God is with us. He will go before. He will never leave us. He will never leave us. God is for us. He has open arms. He will never fail us. He will never fail us. Lifted up, he defeated the grave, raised to life. Our God is able. In his name we overcome. For the Lord our God is able. For the Lord our God is able. And for the Lord our God is able. And you're making all things new. You are making all things new. You are making all things new. We are free. Peace be still, you are near. There's nowhere we can go that you won't shine. Redemption's light. Our guilt withdrawn, and as you rise, we come alive. The grave has lost, the old is gone, and you're making all things new. You are making all things new. You are making all things new. We are free. Hope is found. You are here. Our hearts forever sealed by this love that came for us. Now we are yours, and as you rise, we come alive, and you're making all things new. You are making all things new. You are making all things new. We are free. Yes, you're making all things new. You are making all things new. Yes, you're making all things new. We are free. Your love never ending. Your grace never failing. Redemption Yes, you're making all things new. You are making all things new. We are free. We are free.
Amen. You may be seated. At this time, I'm going to invite the ushers to please come forward to collect the offering. And as you do this, I'm going to pray. God, thank you. Thank you that we're able to gather here together, Lord. Thank you for all the love in this room. Thank you that we're able to live life together. Thank you for opportunities of education to learn, Lord. God, so that we can love deeper. I pray a blessing over this time together, over the offering that is collected, and over the children's time together. I pray this all in your name. Amen. Children, you are dismissed for junior church. Those of you who are in the preschool to grade 6, you can go downstairs. Looks like Jody's going to lead you downstairs. You can head over there now. Have fun.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. 'Cause you are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are the way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God.
I'm going to invite you to stand as you are able. Let's worship together.
You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. And I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are a way maker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Yes, that is who you are. 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 Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop, you never stop. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop, you never stop. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Yes, that is who you are. 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 Before he spoke creation, the God of heaven knew our names. Formed in his reflection, we are his glory on display. His heart is good, he's always kind. With the cross he proved he's on our side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, he will not let us fall. We are the Lord, and he will never forsake his own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. His love he lavished on us and called us children of the King. And in his loving kindness, he chose the lowly and the weak. His heart is good, he's always kind. With the cross he proved he's on our side. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. No matter where we go, we're close to the Father's heart. And though we stumble, he will not let us fall. We are the Lord, and he will never forsake his own. We are the sons, we are the daughters of God. When the lies speak louder than the truth, remind me that I belong to you. And when I can't see past the dark of night, remind me you're always by my side. And when those lies speak louder than the truth, remind me that I belong to you. of God.
You may be seated.
Morning, all. Welcome. So our little summer road trip series through the Psalms has kind of taken on a little bit of a life of its own. It's kind of like me in music, when I never really know when to stop. So we've continued our little road trip through September, and we find ourselves on the first weekend of October, and I haven't been able to tear myself out of the Psalms quite yet. So bear with me. I think this will be the last week, but I make no promises. So this will be a continuation, and I alluded to it last week. This will be a little bit of a continuation of where we were going last week. Our conversation about some of the more troubling Psalms. We kind of looked at violence and what do we do with that. Psalms like Psalm 58. Break the teeth in their mouths, O God. Lord, tear the fangs out of those lions. Let them vanish like water that flows away. When they draw the bow, let their arrows fall short. May they be like a slug that melts away as it moves along. Like a stillborn child that never sees the sun. Before your pots can feel the heat of the thorns, whether they be green or dry, the wicked will be swept away. The righteous will be glad when they are avenged. They will dip their feet in the blood of the wicked. The people will say, surely the righteous are rewarded. Surely there is a God who judges the earth. Or Psalm 69, may the table set before them become a snare. May it become retribution and a trap. May their eyes be darkened so that they can't see, and their backs be bent forever. Pour out your wrath on them. Let your fierce anger overtake them. May their place be deserted. Let there be no one to dwell in their tents. For they persecute those you wound. They talk about the pain of those you hurt. Charge them with crime upon crime. Don't let them share in your salvation. May they be blotted out of the book of life and not be listed with the righteous. Last week we talked about the difficult task of reconciling the seeming violence of these Psalms to a supposedly loving, forgiving, and good God. We talked about the time and the context and the culture in which they were written. We talked about the propaganda implemented by those who write the histories and how that is even true in the Bible. We talked about people viewing and understanding God in much of the time and place of the Psalms as a warrior, as a conqueror. We talked about how a more primitive culture would see God more primitively. So the God of Israel may not have been any more violent than may be true today. But the duties and realms and characteristics of gods, as seen and understood by those ancient peoples, would be very different from our current cultural and personal perspectives. So I'd like to just explore one other angle, one other idea before we leave our time in the Psalms, and that idea is the reality of captivity, of enslavement, of oppression. Last week we started out by asking, what do we do with these Psalms? These Psalms that cry out for justice, that cry out in pain, that call for God to come and destroy, to do harm. Where do we put them? How do we interpret them? These Psalms make us uncomfortable. These psalms make us shy away. We feel as though we need to apologize almost for their words and for their sentiments. We blush at how violent they seem. We, in our current space, don't know what to do with them because we don't understand them. These psalms were written by a people who had experienced being ravaged by their enemies, conquered by their enemies, raped, pillaged, plundered, burned, enslaved, killed by their enemies. Many of us in this room have no place for that. We have no idea what something like that would be like. We read about it in history books or we watch it depicted on the screen, but we have no clue. There is no connection there. It never makes it to a place in our beings that we can actually feel it. We have no idea what it's like to be bought and sold, paraded around naked for the rich and powerful to purchase. No idea what it's like to be labeled 3/5 of a human being. No idea what it's like to know that the question of the day revolves around whether or not you have a soul. We have no idea what it's like to have our children stolen from us, to watch our wives be raped in front of us, or to see our husbands castrated so that they cannot procreate. To be forced from a place that we have always known. We have no idea what it's like to have no home, to have no place, to have nothing. How could most of us ever hope to understand the cries of sheer desolation and abandonment that these kind of oppressions bring? How could we ever begin to comprehend the loss and the heartbreak and the hopelessness? We have no place for these psalms because we have never had to make a place for that kind of pain. We have no place for these psalms because we've never had to make a place for that kind of pain. Yesterday, September 30th, was Canada's National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Today, we humbly stand in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. We stand in solidarity and support with all those who have been oppressed, all those who have been marginalized. We stand in solidarity and support of our 2S LGBTQ plus friends. We stand in solidarity and support of all people of color and differing ethnic backgrounds. These groups know far better than many of us how it feels to cry the words of these psalms. These groups know far better than many of us how it feels to live the words of these psalms. So as we mark this day of truth and reconciliation together, let's just take a minute and look at how we got here. Let's take some time to try and understand these words that we find foreign. In our context, for centuries, Indigenous communities have fallen victim to countless statutes enacted by the Canadian government. Despite efforts to make amends and reconcile with Indigenous people, segregation and systemic racism continue to exist. The inability of Indigenous peoples to practice their heritage and their culture, language, traditions has often been referred to as an act of genocide. How did it happen? Where did it start? What were and are some of the systems that keep that cultural genocide going? Well, in 1876, the year that Canada became Canada, the federal government passed the Indian Act, a law that governs matters pertaining to Indian status, bans groups of Indigenous people and Indian reserves. The document outlines assimilation policies that terminate the cultural, social, economic, and political distinctiveness of Aboriginal peoples by assimilating them into mainstream Canadian life and values as the goal of the Indian Act. During the 1870s, the first residential schools opened. Ultimately, 150,000 children would be forced to attend before the last one was closed in just 1996. These schools were operated by the government, the church, other religious organizations. The aim of these schools was to assimilate children into a Euro-Canadian culture. At the time, several individuals protested attendance to poor conditions, mistreatment, and the inadequate quality of the schooling. Many children refused to relinquish their languages and their identities. Some escaped the schools to return home to their families, while many died trying to do just that. Nearly 6,000 children passed away in these schools or trying to get home. In 1884, potlatches were banned by the federal government because of Section 141 of the Indian Act. Potlatches are gift-giving ceremonies for coastal First Nations in the West to celebrate and distribute wealth within Indigenous communities. The prohibiting of such a tradition was a major roadblock to the self-governance for First Nations. Section 141 also made it really difficult for Indigenous community members to hire legal help to be able to fight for their rights. And then from the 1960s to the 1980s, thousands of children were removed from their families and taken to non-Indigenous homes, where they were raised under new values and new belief systems. Many children lost their names, forgot their language, and were abused in these settings. In 2017, an Ontario judge ruled the failure of the federal government due to the 16,000 Indigenous Ontarians that were separated from their families. In 1988, Aboriginal peoples protested the Spirit Sings exhibition. The Lubicon Cree, a Cree First Nation in northern Alberta, posed a concern with Shell Oil, one of the exhibition's exclusive corporate sponsors, because the company had destroyed their lifestyle. After the Second World War, there was a shift in addressing atrocities. Canada's commitment to the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights led to a revision of the Indian Act. Oppressive sections were taken out to grant Aboriginals with Canadian citizenship status to change from being viewed as a separate, isolated, or ostracized group. The original document promoted a social and cultural disruption for these communities and committed a major human rights violation. And then in 1969, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau proposed the White Paper policy to actually abolish the Indian Act, dismantled the Department of Indian Affairs. The policy effectively lumped Aboriginal peoples in with the rest of Canadian citizens. Indigenous peoples rejected the policy, and the government dropped it because First Nations communities believed assimilating into mainstream Canadian society was not the means to achieve equality. In 2019, the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls found Canada guilty of historic and ongoing genocide against Indigenous women and girls. The violence against and disappearances of Indigenous women and girls demonstrates that the Treaties, Amendments, and Reconciliation Act to be ineffective in protecting these lost women. Countless Indigenous communities continue to live in fear and poor living conditions without receiving adequate protection, which demands greater resources to address issues of violence, segregation, and inequality in all aspects of life. These communities know the Psalms of Lament. These communities know the Psalms of suffering and loss. These communities understand how the psalms and songs that we find difficult can mean so much. They have their own songs of loss and anger and hopelessness. And the things we've talked about just barely begin to scratch the surface. We have to do the work of bringing near the atrocities of which we speak and owning our part in the past, the present, and the future. So in light of what we've talked about, in light of what we know to be true about our country, about our government, about our church, I invite you to read with me the words of Psalm 17. It's my hope and my prayer that you will hear this song as it tumbles from your lips in a way that you have not heard it before. That you will understand this psalm in a way that you have never understood it before. That you'll be able to put yourself into a different place and space and hear the words coming out of your mouth. God, would you help us to understand? Would you hear us together? We speak these words in solidarity. Can we stand together as we do this, please? This is Psalm 17. Let's read together. O Lord, hear my plea for justice. Listen to my cry for help. Pay attention to my prayer, for it comes from honest lips. Declare me innocent, for you see those who do right. You have tested my thoughts and examined my heart in the night. You have scrutinized me and found nothing wrong. I am determined not to sin in what I say. I have followed your commands, which keep me from following cruel and evil people. My steps have stayed on your path. I have not wavered from following you. I am praying to you because I know you will answer, O God. Bend down and listen as I pray. Show your unfailing love in wonderful ways. By your mighty power, you rescue those who seek refuge from their enemies. Guard me as you would guard your own eyes. Hide me in the shadow of your wings. Protect me from wicked people who attack me, from murderous enemies who surround me. They are without pity. Listen to their boasting. They track me down, surround me, watching for the chance to throw me to the ground. They are like hungry lions, eager to tear me apart, like young lions hiding in ambush. Arise, O Lord, stand against them, bring them to their knees. Rescue me from the wicked with your sword. By the power of your hand, O Lord, destroy those who look to this world for their reward, but satisfy the hunger of your treasured ones. May their children have plenty, leaving an inheritance for their descendants. Because I am righteous, I will see you. When I wake, I will see you face to face and be satisfied. You can be seated. I think one of the hardest things for Christians to learn is humility, the art of not having to be right. It's the realization that we as Christians often forget that we are just as capable of wrongdoing as every other human being on the face of the earth. Our faith does not make us any less culpable for our actions, nor should it ever become a free pass when it comes to opening ourselves up to evil. The fact that people within the church have committed such atrocities is a stark contradiction to the very message that Jesus preached in the Gospels. The best that we can do is to look at the situation straight in its ugly face and admit that the church has in many ways cooperated with evil. Pride under the guise of piety will always cause religious persons to commit atrocities in God's name. In spite of it, being an advocate of truth and love, we as Christians need to stop pretending the church is free from sin. We need more than just thoughts and prayers to mend the broken relationship between us and our indigenous brothers and sisters and friends. Our willingness to pursue reconciliation needs to be prayerfully evident in how we listen to and treat them, in how we acknowledge the past in spite of how uncomfortable it might be. Our willingness to hold space for our LGBTQ plus friends as we create and nurture an affirming place for them to bring all of who they are to our family needs to be evident and meaningful and overflowing with the love of Jesus. I'd like to pray for us. I'd like to pray over us. I'd like to breathe this prayer into us as we continue to see and understand in ways that maybe we have not seen and understood before. May God help us.